Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. It is the afternoon of Friday, the 29th of March, 2013. It is Good Friday, 2013, the end of the first quarter and the eve of the Easter weekend. Let's look at the terrible situation here in the United States. We have an entire large city under fascist dictatorship. It's Detroit. We've got other smaller cities under fascist dictatorships of different types, different faces, but the content is always the supremacy of finance capital over the American people. That's Benton Harbor, Flint, Pontiac, Ecorse. And, of course, in Detroit, the city is now under fascist dictatorship. The educational system had been for quite a while before that. And instead of focusing on creeping fascism and the destruction of representative government, with the mayors and city councils of those localities all being put into receivership by commissars, dictators, little Hitlers, we've had a focus on gay marriage on the one side and gun control on the other. And if you listen to the National Public Radio summary of the U.S. politics of the week this morning on Diane Rehm, it was all about gay marriage, gun control, and nothing about fascism. And this shows you something about how fascism can come about. And when you look at the speeches of someone like Governor Snyder of Michigan, you'll see a new ethos of fascism. No brown shirts, no black shirts, no Roman salutes, no clicking of heels, no parades of goons in the streets yet, but rather a public official in a business suit, seemingly reasonable, seemingly open, seemingly ready for dialogue. But, of course, in reality, this is a totalitarian process that is now going on. Detroit is now under a dictatorship. The elected representatives are simply for show. They're simply props. And the power has gone into this asset-stripping lawyer from the Jones Day law firm here in Washington, D.C., someone who's shown his asset-stripping prowess in busting the United Auto Workers Chrysler division. Now, at the same time, as some will point out, there are other forms of creeping fascism, and of course there are. You have the NDAA, right? That the government can throw anybody in jail as long as it wants, anytime it wants. We've got drones that allegedly can kill anybody anytime certain government officials want. You've got Guantanamo Bay. You've got people being held. You've got the crucifixion of poor Bradley Manning. He's been crucified to cover up for the fact that Julian Assange is still living like a lord, and the CIA WikiLeaks project has been instrumental in overthrowing many a government and damaging quite a few others. But the problem with those is you cannot build a mass movement unless it is about the life and death economic issues of the majority of your population. I can speak from personal experience. During the Vietnam War era, others tried to build a mass movement based on an anti-war platform. It didn't work. It was already evident then that you needed mass traction, material demands, life and death economic demands for the survival of families and individuals in order to contend for any serious share of power. And that was, of course, why the single-issue anti-war movement was such a failure, because it couldn't go beyond that single issue. And then we've had the 9/11 truth movement attempting to fight totalitarianism and war from the point of view of false flag terrorism being exposed. And that, of course, also broke up and really atrophied very rapidly, almost disappeared when Obama came on the scene and sucked the oxygen out of the room. It is only by focusing on the survival needs of working families and working people in general that an actual resistance front can be created. And that is why these totalitarian measures in Michigan, the union busting in Wisconsin that led to a general strike, a mass strike in the entire state at the beginning of 2011, the magnificent and somewhat successful mobilization of working people in Ohio to stop the fascist Kasich from destroying all unions in that state, the unfortunate failure to fight in Indiana for very deep historical reasons, right? The old Indiana copperhead machine, very strong, the thing that gave you Dan Quayle and the Indianapolis newspaper there, which was famous for its reactionary prowess. Anyway, you get the picture. It's time to consider, to act, not even to consider, but to get busy on the front of resistance to defend the economic rights of masses of working people. Forget about process reforms and forget about getting people to fight for somebody else. They can't do it. They're too busy fighting for themselves to survive. You can't expect people to go out and take other people's interests more seriously than some of those other people themselves take them. Some of these things can be added later on. Once you have a mass movement, it would have to have a foreign policy, and that would have to be peace and development. But that is not the way you get the mass movement. The mass movement starts with defending your own existence and those of your family, your children, and others close to you. That's the starting point. After that, once you have that going, then many other things, all other things, become possible in the due fullness of time. Now, as we look out here, Good Friday afternoon, we're looking at the United States. Corporate profits have the highest share of the gross domestic product in recent history, in the past 4 to 5 decades. Corporate profits way up. The wage share of gross domestic product is the lowest since at least a dozen years ago. The example of Caterpillar is cited in news accounts. Caterpillar has record profits and a 6-year wage freeze. So profits go up, 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 and the wages are frozen, meaning they go down because there is a significant inflation going on in the background. Not that we're going to make that into the main issue. Austerity is killing people. We have 2 reports this week. The World Health Organization, WHO, and the British medical journal, The Lancet. It's the equivalent of the New England Journal of Medicine or the Journal of the AMA. Both of these, a report from the WHO and The Lancet, indicate that the austerity measures, especially in Europe, are beginning to cut longevity. They make people die sooner as a result of killer austerity. When I say genocidal austerity, killer cuts, killer austerity, that is no hyperbole. That is hard fact. Austerity kills. And if you don't want to be on the receiving end of that, you have got to mobilize and fight. Now, we have had some early signal success. The United Front Against Austerity has been pushing, as you know, a petition on the White House website. You still have time to go to that. Go to Tarpley.net. Go to the top of the page. It says, "Tell Obama to tax Wall Street." Click on that. Go and sign it. I urge you to do it. They're coming after you, so you might as well fight back. You can't remain anonymous forever, because if you do, it's at the end of that is an anonymous resting place that you don't want. So forget about your anonymity. There are no secrets in the modern world with all the electronics. Get on there and tell Obama it's time to tax Wall Street. At least that much can be done. And at the same time, we've also had 1 or 2 of our gallant and intrepid spokespersons getting on mass media. We've had one in particular getting on the C-SPAN Washington Journal one recent morning. And if you look at the website for the United Front Against Austerity, you can find some more about that there. And we're going to continue that. Take back the airwaves. So we're taking back the airwaves, and we will be back in... Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. It's our Good Friday program, the Good Friday spell here from Washington, D.C. on the 29th of March, 2013. And we're talking about the defense of the dignity of the human person against genocidal austerity and killer cuts. This is surely the area where all persons of goodwill can unite worldwide. It's time for a defense of human life, human existence, social reproduction, cultural and political and economic progress based on this kind of a platform. It's the basis, as I've tried to argue in the past. Christian charity, Confucian benevolence, and Muslim social solidarity come together, and that's already enough to drag the world. And there are significant cognate ideas in the other faiths and the other cultural traditions. And of course, for the secular, it's obvious that natural law dictates that the standard of living has to be kept high because we need scientific and technological progress, which comes from educated people able to make discoveries or assimilate and practice discoveries made by others. So instead, we've got the wedge issues. We're having a festival of wedge issues. We've got a gaggle of fascists and reactionaries. We've got Rand Paul, little Rand, Senator Mike Lee, the grandson or the great-grandson of the Mountain Meadows Massacre. Senator Lee, who thinks the child labor laws are unconstitutional. He wants 12-year-olds working in mines, chained to carts. That's his idea. He wants to compete with China on that basis. We've got Rubio, the senator from Gusanos. We've got Imhoff. I forgot that Rand Paul, of course, is the senator from Austria. And we've got a couple of others. Oh, let's not forget Ted Cruz, the facies hypocrita, the new Joe McCarthy in the United States Senate. They're all out there. They want to filibuster on guns. It's obvious that for the Republicans, the stress on guns is very welcome because their hysterical coalition had been held together by the pledge of no new taxes under any circumstances, and they had to more or less cave on that under the pressure really of reality more than Obama. But now they're able to regroup around another hysterical taboo, the idea that guns equal freedom. Well, I'm afraid guns don't equal freedom, and I'm afraid if you look, I was thinking about Michigan, right? If Michigan goes under fascist dictatorship, are we going to hear from the Michigan militia? So far, not, and maybe even the Michigan militia is going to be on the side of the fascist governor as he shuts down. He's got basically the majority of the black population of Michigan, which is a significant part of the black population of the United States. This is now under dictatorship. So some civil rights law is being violated here. Hey, Holder, hey, Obama, hey, 14th Amendment, you've got to provide a Republican form of government for Michigan. And if much of the state is under austerity dictatorship, then forget it. The answer to that is debt moratorium, debt freeze for every one of those cities, and then revenue sharing, aid from Washington to reflate them and refloat them using money garnered through the Wall Street sales tax. We hope to hear from Reverend Pinckney from Benton Harbor later in the show. On Thursday morning, yesterday, the 28th of March, there was a motorcade action on the interstates, I-94 near Benton Harbor, the interstates around Detroit, and similarly Pontiac, Flint, Ecorse, and others. Motorcades that were traveling, let's say, at or slightly below the speed limit to slow down the usually frantic pace on those highways, as all those hourly workers are careening around the interstates of Detroit. So we've also got, of course, the gay marriage being discussed. Let me just deal with gay marriage briefly. Gay marriage is an open and shut case, and it should be long gone. In terms of the California case, the 14th Amendment says no state shall deprive anybody of the equal protection of the laws. California, with this referendum, Proposition 8, is trying to deprive a class of people of the equal protection of the laws. No. And I don't care what the people say. You can't put basic rights up for a referendum. That's one of the cardinal principles of the U.S. Constitution. Certain rights are guaranteed, and they go beyond momentary majorities. So you've got to assert the Constitution, equal protection of the laws. So California, sorry, your referendum has no value. And, of course, the DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, same story. You're trying to deprive people of the equal protection of the laws, so no way. So the point with this is to get it done and get it out of the way, because as long as this is with us, it will be used by reactionaries as a wedge issue, as it is being used now. The Republicans have successfully regrouped around gun control and anti-gay marriage. Remember that in 2004, the re-election of Mad Dog Bush the Younger by Karl Rove was mainly done by getting the turnout up through referenda to outlaw gay marriage. And that was done. And with that, then we had another 4 years of the Iraq War. And, of course, we had the build-up to the financial crash of 2007, 2008. Now, if you put all this together, the Republicans have retaken the initiative in Washington. It is unbelievable. The Republicans now have the initiative. Obama is essentially dead in the water. He has no proposals. Now, it's his own fault for many reasons, recently and going back. Recently, Obama had the inaugural address, his second inaugural. He then had the State of the Union address. He needed to put forward an attractive, ambitious, robust, hard-hitting program of job creation, infrastructure building. He needed the things that we're recommending: the Wall Street sales tax to stabilize the federal budget and force the Fed to open a multi-trillion-dollar credit stimulus infrastructure window to buy bonds from the states and the authorities that would then get the building process going. That would give you a recovery. And if you kept it going, you have to provide continuous Federal Reserve credit, because the zombie banks, of course, the too big to fail money center boys, they can't do it. So Obama blew it. He's got no recovery program. He's got no jobs program. He's got nothing. And instead, you can see what Obama's trying to do. He's trying to play his own side of the cultural wedge issues. Here we have the Washington Examiner, which is going out of existence here, but they still have an editorial. Culture war is all Obama has left. Very interesting. They quote Howard Dean, Vermont Governor Howard Dean, campaigning for president, 2004. He said, "I am tired of fighting elections on guns, God, and gays. We're going to fight this election on our turf, which is going to be jobs, education, and health care." Yes, obviously, if you're a real Democrat, you want to get the discussion to be jobs, education, health care. That's the argument you win. The guns, God, and gays, Obama seems to think he can win it because of the demographic shift. But you're still left with a split, and it's not working. So Obama is attempting to keep himself upright using the wedge issues, and the Republicans are cleaning his clock. They have seized the initiative, and Boner is gloating. We'll get to that in just a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Good Friday afternoon. The Republicans have seized the offensive. They've got the initiative right now. Obama is on the defensive. He is dead in the water. He's going nowhere. He's got no recovery program, no jobs program, no nothing. He's drifting and attempting to score minor points on gun control and gay marriage. He's got MSNBC geared up, but it's not working. Obama cannot thrive on wedge issues. The entire logic of the New Deal coalition, which he was supposed to revive, is the public interest. 80% of the population want their New Deal rights, and they want an economic recovery. And Obama, as we'll see, is going in the opposite direction. So Howard Dean said, look, we need jobs, education, and health care. Of course, he had no answers to those things, but you get the idea. Obama this week is signing a budget which takes the federal government to September 30th, right? The rest of fiscal 2013, fiscal 2014 begins October 1st. What's contained in that budget? Oh, $1 billion in cuts for university research labs. The grant system of the National Science Foundation, we're going down from about 11 or 12,000 grants per year. We're losing about 1,000 of those grants. So $1 billion is being lost on university research labs, right? Think of that when you're dying of some dread disease 10 years from now. You can thank the sequester. Obama, in his State of the Union, said he wanted to enhance early childhood education. He wanted every 4-year-old to have access to a good preschool. That would probably cost the U.S. about $10 billion. That would be an investment that would pay itself 100 times, 1,000 times in the next couple of generations. What did Obama just sign? The Head Start is being cut $400 million as a result of sequester. That means tens of thousands of poor children are being kicked out. Remember, the official calculation is the sequester is costing us 750,000 jobs and 0.6% on the GDP. And you can probably double both of those because of the multiplier that does act in these cases. So Obama had nothing left to do but to sign a budget resolution to the end of the fiscal year that incorporates all of the sequester. Now, the Obama White House, of course, thought the Republicans would cave on sequester. They would turn it off, at least in part. They would roll it back in part because he thought that the Republicans were obsessed with saving Pentagon spending, which takes a big hit. But no, now we're told Obama is preparing a budget, and this is coming now on April 10th. Obama's budget, it's, as the Republicans will undoubtedly tell us, it's 2 months late, always petty anti-process questions, but that's not the problem. Obama will cut entitlements April 10th. The Washington Post Wonk book predicts that there are going to be cuts to entitlements, limitations on entitlement growth in the budget that Obama presents. And we'll talk about some other budgets here in just a minute. Now, naturally, where did the sequester come from? The sequester came from Obama's cowardice, his refusal to respect the Constitution. The 14th Amendment says the public debt of the United States incurred under law shall not be questioned. It is sacrosanct. Default is illegal. Debt limits are unconstitutional. You've got to pay. Once you've incurred those bond obligations and you've got deadlines on those bonds, you've got to pay. Obama refused to honor the Constitution. So we got, therefore, the Satan sandwich. The Satan sandwich led then to the 12 tyrants. The failure of the 12 tyrants to agree on genocidal cuts led then to the sequester. So it all goes back to Obama's refusal to fight and use the Constitution to beat the Republicans over the head. And the Supreme Court be damned, as Lincoln at one point said about the Confederate traitor Roger Taney, who stayed as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court through just about all of the Civil War. You made your decision, now you can go carry it out, right? I've got these armies, what are you going to do? And if he wanted to arrest a Union officer, Lincoln would put him into a fort, and they wouldn't let the bailiff from Taney's kangaroo court get in. So that's the kind of spirit we would need now. That would be electrifying for the American people. So thanks to Obama's cowardice, his refusal to honor the Constitution, we had the Satan sandwich and the 12 tyrants and now the sequester. So we need the 14th Amendment. Obama ducked the issue. And in a specific sense, the Washington Post here on Monday, March 25th, signing cuts, Obama lets priorities slip. With his signature this week, Obama will lock into place deep spending cuts that threaten to undermine his second-term economic vision just 4 months after he won re-election. So whatever he said about early childhood education, research and development, infrastructure budget for highways and rails, it's all worthless because he's willing to cave to the Republicans. He set this in motion already 2 years ago. One interesting think tank comment comes from a guy called Michel at the Economic Policy Institute. Economic Policy Institute becoming a little bit prominent these days because of these budget disasters. Obama brought it on himself to the extent that he validated the deficit issue. Yeah, you should have been fighting for jobs, and you should have been fighting from a forward position, force the Federal Reserve to fund several $1 trillion worth of infrastructure, $3.6 trillion, according to the Distinguished American Society of Civil Engineers. Instead, if you sit there on the defensive, then they come after you, and you see what you get. So Obama did this to himself. Now, let's look at the competing budget plans. Well, as I say, Obama, we're waiting for Obama. April 10th, he's going to cut entitlements. It's unbelievable. He ran, the rhetoric in the campaign was, I'll defend your entitlements, I'll protect your economic rights under the New Deal and the Great Society. And as the same article that I just mentioned goes through, the scissors crisis between the rhetoric of the Obama White House, we'll defend your rights, and the reality is becoming immense. Let me just, before we go any further, Boehner has gloated as the Easter holiday comes on. Boehner gloats in a letter to the Republican caucus, giving them talking points for going home during the Easter vacation here. Boehner gloats that he has re-seized the initiative. He's forced Obama to recalibrate his approach. Here's what Boehner says to his own members. Quote, we forged a new tactical plan that focused on using our limited leverage to maximum effort in support of the reforms needed to support economic growth and job creation, blah, blah, blah. Republicans may be the minority party in Washington, but because we forged a plan together and have stuck to it, our actions as a team over the past couple of months have made a difference to all Americans. So what he's saying is, we have seized the initiative. Part of it is, don't go for big, spectacular confrontations that allow Obama to appeal to public opinion, but rather do it with this relentless pressure for killer cuts. Now, we've got the Democrats in the Senate for the first time, as the Republicans will tell us, in so many years, in a Coons age. Patty Murray did the Senate budget. This has now passed the Senate, 50 to 49. Remember, this stuff is all on budget reconciliation. You can't filibuster it. $100 billion for infrastructure, $1 trillion in additional revenue through various things, not the Wall Street sales tax, and the deficit at the end of, 10 years, $566 billion in deficit, right? About what? Not a little bit more than half of what it is now. So that's the Senate, and that goes then to the House Conference Committee. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Naturally, keep up with everything at Tarpley.net. Go sign that petition for the Wall Street sales tax at the White House. You can get to that through Tarpley.net. And, of course, Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley on Twitter. So the main problem, April 10th, Obama is going to attack entitlements. Let's get ready for it. His treachery knows no bounds. Patty Murray, her budget now, 50 to 49, passed the Senate, goes to the conference committee eventually. No Wall Street sales tax, nothing about mobilizing the Fed, not going to get anywhere. Progressive caucus, of course, in the House of the Democrats, this would be Keith Ellison, Grijalva, people like this. They have good intentions. They want to cut corporate welfare. They can give you about $1 trillion worth of cutting of corporate welfare, subsidies to oil companies, and so forth. But I don't see, based on the preliminary reading of this, I don't see a massive program of infrastructure. And above all, they haven't gotten the simple idea that you get the Fed to finance this. You don't have to balloon the deficit. You're going to have enough to do with your federal budget to maintain the entitlements, right? You want to keep paying Medicare so people can stay alive. That's enough burden for the federal budget. Let's shift that burden to the richest part of the government, where the money is, the Federal Reserve. There's all the money in the world at the Federal Reserve. So let's tap into that. And as long as it goes for tangible physical production in the form of infrastructure especially, we raise the productivity of labor and the absolute profit of the society rises so that it can easily be paid back at these long maturities that I've been talking about. Now, the budget, we have two budgets in the House that we want to take a look at. One is the Rand-Paul Nuremberg budget, and Nuremberg, because this is a high crime against humanity. It constitutes a violation of the Nuremberg Code because it has a butcher's bill attached to it in the form of American lives and American blood. What would little Rand do? He wants to cut $4 trillion over 5 years, and he says that will balance the budget. It's a lie. I guarantee you this will never balance the budget. It will balloon the deficit, make it bigger, but it will destroy the United States. If you think the 1950s were nirvana, that was the late New Deal. This would be hell on earth with the Austrian school in command. First of all, privatize Social Security, voucherize Medicare, raise the age for Social Security and perhaps Medicare also, impose a flat tax, 17% flat tax. This is it masquerades as a proportional tax that everybody pays the same percentage, but we know in reality a proportional tax is highly regressive because if you take 10% of some guy's meager budget and it all goes for food and rent and heating and clothing and a little bit for the doctor, if you cut 10% out of the guy's food budget, you're really hurting him. Whereas if it's a multi-billionaire and you cut 10% out of his budget, well, again, he has to go from 3 Learjets to 2 Learjets. This is simply not commensurate. So as we've known, social science has long discovered that proportional taxation is regressive taxation. The only acceptable form of taxation is progressive. The greater your ability to pay, because you're talking about different things. The bottom layer are the necessities of the poor. The middle layer are these simple little amenities of the middle class. And then we get the super sybaritic Lucullian luxuries of the super rich. And that's where you want to do the cutting. But, of course, again, in our method, we have to recognize there's not enough money there to solve the Depression. Where the money is, that river of money is called Wall Street and Chicago markets, and we want 1% of that. But little Rand wants to abolish the Department of Education, abolish the Department of Energy, abolish the Department of Commerce. He may have another one that he wants to get rid of. So if you destroy the Department of Education, no more Pell Grants. Poor kids, black kids, Hispanic, Appalachian poor, can't go to college with a Pell Grant, and they're meager enough. The Stafford loan system, gone, right? You can't get a interest rate subsidized loan. And remember, that was Ron Paul's thank you, was to raise, he voted to raise the interest rate, to double the interest rate on the poor college suckers and dupes who had supported him. So in addition to that, obviously, little Rand wants to cut Medicaid. That means cut this rock-bottom plan to keep body and soul together for the working poor and others and the unemployed and the destitute in the states, and to block grant food stamps. Now, that means you give a certain amount of money to somebody like Walker or Kasich or Snyder or Mitch Daniels, and then you let those brutal, cruel reactionaries decide how they want to spend that. Maybe they want to spend it on something else, and they can. S-chip would be brutally cut, right? That's the one bright spot that some kids have been able to get health insurance based on state child health insurance program, but no more under little Rand. He also wants to cut all foreign aid. Now, I stress again, the United States provides 1/2 of all emergency food aid in the world. There are lots of people in the world, 50,000 a day, who are dying of starvation, malnutrition, and similar things. If you take away 1/2 of the emergency food aid, what is the result? Well, it's got to be higher death rates and massively higher death rates in the third world. So we've got domestic genocide here, and we've got international genocide. And that's Rand Paul. That's our wonderful libertarian who cares so much about this hypothetical situation. Can you be killed by a drone? Notice he doesn't seem to care if you're killed by a sniper or by somebody knifing you in the subway or whatever it is. He's only concerned about drones because he's trying to do a publicity stunt. And then we have Congressman Ryan. This is now amazing because Ryan would normally be considered a raving fascist from the John Birch Society, but he's now considered less extreme than Rand Paul, so much so that Senator Rubio, senator from Gusanos, says he voted against Rand's budget, and I think he would be more favorable to the Ryan budget. The Ryan budget also cuts $4 billion. It cuts food stamps. It block grants those. It will cut Social Security, privatize that. It will cut school lunches. It will cut Medicare. It abolishes Obamacare, so you can go back to having pre-existing conditions so that you can't get coverage no matter what you do at a price you could afford, although it keeps the taxation. All of the Obamacare taxes are retained, whereas the benefits of Obamacare, such as they are, and there are a few, those are removed. It also cuts what is now called welfare. Now, this is a tiny program compared to aid to families with dependent children. This is now temporary assistance to needy families, TAMF. It's a very small program. It has grown somewhat because of the Depression. He would cut that. This is a cruel and stupid budget, similar to Rand Paul, not quite as extreme as Rand Paul. The estimate from the Economic Policy Institute on Ryan is that would destroy 2 million jobs. So you get the picture. This is now the panorama. This is absolutely horrendous. And there is nobody speaking for the American people in this sense. The Progressive Caucus and the Patty Murray people in the Senate will tell Obama, we oppose what you want to do in terms of gouging and chiseling Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the economic rights of the people. But they won't fight Obama because once Obama turns on his dazzling smile, they will sacrifice the American people for Obama's pretty face and for his place in the history book. So that's where we stand right now as we wait for Obama to come out attacking your economic rights and stripping you and flaying you alive. We'll be back in a minute with the second hour. Welcome back to our second hour here on World Crisis Radio. Good Friday afternoon, the 29th of March, 2013. The solution to the U.S. domestic issue, two prongs, the 1% Wall Street sales tax to stabilize the federal budget, maintain entitlement spending in order to preserve the lives and the abilities of our workforce. That is the main issue. That's the public interest, in addition to the obvious humanitarian and moral imperative of keeping people alive. And then the actual recovery must be financed by the Federal Reserve. It's so simple. What is the problem here? You Keynesians, why don't you get it? You force Bernanke to open a window at the Fed, $3.6 trillion, as the American Society of Civil Engineers has pointed out. We need $3.6 trillion right up front and get all of those projects going. And it should include, despite what Krugman says, high-profile infrastructure project that will change people's lives. Build the transcontinental maglev fast rail, build that tunnel under the Hudson River so the commute gets easier. If you can save 15 or 20 minutes a day on your commute, that means something to people. They can get an idea that progress is still possible, and progress is possible. It's always available. All you need is the political will to get it. It's not linear. It's not automatic. None of those things, but it's there, and you have to dare to struggle and dare to win. Now, let's look at the other aspect, the international financial crisis. Now, the Cyprus crisis has been momentarily, dealt with, I guess, by the Troika, the European Union, Barroso and the commissioners, the Eurogarics and Eurocrats, along with Draghi of the European Central Bank and Madame Lagarde, otherwise known as Madame Lagarce, of the International Monetary Fund. And they have now put their hands into the bank accounts in Cyprus of those over 130 thousand dollars, that is to say 100,000 euros and up. You will have to be gouged by something going up to, I believe, 40%. Now, on the one hand, think of the obvious alternative, the policy alternative that we support here is a debt moratorium and a debt freeze that would allow Cyprus to say we're going to have to suspend payment on all external financial debt. And at the same time, I'm sorry about Russia and the Russian oligarchs and the Russian international companies. You're going to have to put those banks through triage. You're going to have, since you've had a bank holiday, and they did, you're going to have to triage them. And if they're not sound, if they're not solvent, if they've gone into derivatives too much, which is what it usually means, then they've got to be shut down. Chapter 11, bankruptcy liquidation. Obviously, one way to proceed is to immediately cancel, delete, disqualify all derivatives. They're the last thing that gets paid, and you make sure that they are never getting paid. And that, unfortunately, will cause losses. But on the other hand, a country, if it's the banking system is 8 times the size of the GDP, that is Cyprus. This is obviously a somewhat speculative investment. So if you weren't in a guaranteed account, then unfortunately, there is no alternative. I don't see who's going to make that good. The interesting thing is capital controls. Now, capital controls have now come back, right? The genie is out of the bottle as far as capital controls are concerned. If you look at Tarpley.net and go back to the fall of 2009, you will see that I called for Iceland to impose capital controls back then as a way to save the Icelandic crown. Now, that would have been highly effective. This is an essay. You can see it. It's called Only a Debt Moratorium Can Save Iceland, September 24th, 2009. And let's just give you the exact quote so you can see that this is indeed my policy. As an additional safeguard against the transformation of Icelandic internal loans into hot money flight capital for a new currency carry trade, capital controls and exchange controls must be maintained and strictly enforced. So that, I think, is an important thing. Now, unfortunately, in the case of Cyprus, it may not be effective. It may be too late, maybe not. But the interesting thing is that the tool, the inherently useful tool of capital control, this is now available. For example, if you go back to Malaysia during the Asian contagion, they had capital controls, and those helped them to recover faster than the other countries. Some people are now saying, oh, the capital controls violate the free trade neoliberal basis of the European Union. Good. It's time to junk and jettison that European garbage of neoliberalism, get rid of that, and go back to the social democratic trade unionism and Catholic social doctrine that was the original basis of the European Union. So Cyprus had a banking system that was 8 times the gross domestic product. Luxembourg has a banking system which is 20 times the gross domestic product. Malta, another island in the Mediterranean, is similar to Cyprus. It has a banking system which is 8 times the gross domestic product. This is now the twilight of offshore capital. I wonder what's going to happen in the Cayman Islands soon, even though that's denominated in dollars and pounds. So this is now Cyprus. The other one that is in danger of going into crisis is Slovenia. So Luxembourg, Malta, Slovenia thought to be next. After attacking the pigs, as Jimmy Allen of Goldman Sachs called them, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, Spain, we've now got a second round of victims being attacked by ratings agencies and credit default swaps. This is a wolf pack of hedge fund hyenas and zombie bankers from Wall Street and the City of London. And the European Union would have to defend itself. Again, get the Euro Tobin up to 1% immediately. Outlaw credit default swaps permanently. Outlaw other kinds of derivatives. And begin to use other important tools. Now, in the middle of this, we're getting the line that Merkel is the new Hitler. Well, Merkel is not yet the new Hitler. Merkel is the new Brüning. She is the super austerity regime from 1930 to 1932, except her genius is to impose the Brüning austerity cuts. The hunger chancellor, Brüning, was able to impose that on Germany, a general cut of about 25% in all categories of public spending, employment, and the rest. In her case, she exports it to these other countries. But, of course, she's also on the receiving end. The whole crisis in Europe has been exported by the U.S. and the British, where the crisis began, into Europe, which has no need to go through this. Now, in the middle of it all, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. The BRICS meeting in South Africa has promise. Obviously, it's the one positive variable in the world situation, but at the same time, a great deal of inertia and a failure, I would say, to think big and fast. The BRICS are talking about a global development bank with about $50 billion of capitalization. Each of the five would be putting in $10 billion. It was supposed to be $50 billion each for a $250 billion, but a global development bank. It's time to get that going now. You can't let these places like Cyprus just go by. You've got to mobilize your development bank now. We'll talk about this more in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, we welcome the meeting of the BRICS, and above all, we welcome the idea of a global development bank that would be an alternative to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. This is long overdue. However, this is not simply a way for countries that are being kept out of the leadership of the IMF to create their own version of the IMF, right? This has got to be something radically different. It's got to be a development bank rather than a monetarist currency bank, and it cannot become the instrument for imposing austerity and otherwise undermining national sovereignty for countries around the world. And above all, it needs to be bigger. 10 billion for 5 countries, 50 billion is good. The original plan was 50 billion each for $250 billion in capitalization. But again, the point is you've got to get this going and you've got to use it to intervene. In other words, it's got to be done strategically and in a timely fashion. This is now political economy where timing plays an important role. So again, thanks to the BRICS for creating this, the division seems to be China is assigned the primacy in Africa, and Russia looks after the Middle East. This is fine. It's important to have an alternative to the U.S., the British, the French, and the other Western imperialists. The Chinese labor practices need to be radically upgraded. The hard bargaining needs to be softened by a certain humanitarian concern and just political smarts, not to drive too hard of a bargain, because you drive people back to the Anglo-Americans at that point. So this is all fine, but we needed that to intervene in the current Cyprus crisis, and so far we don't see it. And if the Russians take a hit on these Cyprus bank loans, I would have to say it might have been better than to become more active. Another possible blow-up, in addition to these smaller countries, Cyprus has blown. Luxembourg, Malta, Slovenia, thought to be on the brink, especially Slovenia, but also the two others. The other one is a big one, although slightly outside of the Eurosphere. This is Egypt and the Egyptian pound. We are told that Egypt is about to run out of foreign exchange. Now, when Egypt runs out of foreign exchange, they are the biggest buyer of grain in the world market. A lot of that grain comes from the U.S. A lot of it is financed by the U.S. Egypt is going to have to review what they've been doing up to now, which is the roots of the entire crisis. Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood are capitulating to the International Monetary Fund. They're imposing conditionalities. They're raising the price of gasoline. They're cutting the subsidies on flour and cooking oil and heating and other vital things. And you've got to dump the IMF. That's the only thing that Egypt can do. And there's an area where the BRICS would have to come in. If that BRICS bank is going to be taken seriously as an alternative to the IMF, we can understand if they find that Cyprus is too complex. But Egypt is one where you can't let it go by. Absolutely essential. The BRICS must intervene and get Egypt stabilized and indeed reoriented politically. Now then, in terms of the strategic situation, we got this crisis going on with South Korea, the Republic of Korea, vis-a-vis the DPRK, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea. And in the past 24 hours, Chuck Hagel of the Pentagon has flown 2 stealth bombers over South Korea, not violating North Korean airspace, but creating a hysteria in North Korea, or allowing the creation of a hysteria in North Korea. And we're now told that there are new threats by North Korea to attack the United States. We had an atomic bomb test by North Korea in February. We had an ICBM test. And then we've had new economic sanctions being voted against North Korea in response. Now, normally, we have seen this so many times that it becomes the boy who cried wolf. But even with the slowness and the inadequate scale of the BRICS Development Bank, it is certainly possible that lunatic revanchists and extremists of the Anglo-American empire, neocons and others, may be blowing on this fire in order to get something big. It comes out of a clear blue sky, and it can. Let us assume that this scenario is now serious. What could it be? That CIA, MI6, the rest of them, are attempting to goad the DPRK into something like an attack. Open fire on South Korea. It sounds astounding. It seems like a James Bond story, but a response to the BRICS, a response to the coming of President Xi for reasons that we may not be aware of, it's possible. A response also to continuing frustration on the ability of the Anglo-Americans to wrap up the Syrian aggression, which still escapes them. So this has to be taken seriously. We would like to know what Donald Gregg knows about this. Certainly Donald Gregg, who was the Bush the Elder envoy to South Korea, CIA sort of old boy. People like this, whatever has happened to Don Gregg, I don't know. But this kind of person might have some idea of what's going on there. And then let's just look then at Syria, right? Syria, as a result of Obama's trip, more pressure on Syria. Israel and Turkey have indeed made up their quarrel. They're united against Syria. And we've got this power struggle in the Free Syrian Army and the Syrian National Coalition, the puppet military and political fronts of the attack. Khatib, the agent of Royal Dutch Shell and the Muslim, of Royal Dutch Shell, considered a moderate, apparently Muslim Brotherhood resistance against Khatib, but at the same time, the Muslim Brotherhood, Qatar and Turkey supporting Hassan Hito. The word about him is that he is a total puppet of Qatar, Qatar. They're there for him and Khatib. But now we see Khatib being the spokesman at some international meetings. So the opposition, the rebels, are promising victory within weeks. It's not the first time. Al-Nusra, of course, remains, the Al-Qaeda affiliate remains the main force of this attack. And 10 years after the Iraq War, with expenditure now incurred of $5 to $6 trillion by the United States, a wave of bombs in Iraq this weekend. So we'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, we want to keep up with the Italian situation because the thesis is that the Grillo movement, the five-star movement, represents the most sophisticated, the most advanced form of color revolution destabilization, which the Western intelligence community, CIA, MI6, SDEC, DGSE, all this, that they have come up with. So we want to see how this works, right? This is an important pilot project. Remember, the Italian bourgeoisie, with some British and French help, the Italian bourgeoisie invented fascism in 1922. So what are they inventing today? Remember that Grillo, Beppe Grillo, now celebrated by various Western publications. The Washington Post thinks he's a great guy. As of last Monday, Washington Post says this is a thrilling experience with Grillo. Look at my article about that on Tarpley.net. Remember, Grillo is a neoliberal. He's Austrian. He's libertarian. He's right-wing, reactionary, fascist, proto-fascist, neo-fascist, whatever you want. He wants no unions, cut pensions, don't allow the children of immigrants to have automatic citizenship, no anchor babies. So this past week, there have been the consultations by the various party leaders, the three main coalitions, of course, Grillo, Berlusconi, and Bersani for the Social Democrats, the old PCI. They now go to the Anglo-American asset Napolitano to form a government. And Bersani so far has not been able to form a government. It's not clear to me why Monti and his group, about 8% of the votes, don't join him. That would give you a government, right? And, of course, the goal of the Social Democrats was to support Monti's austerity regime. So I don't see why this doesn't happen. But now we've got Grillo is the same now as Hitler in the summer of 1932. July 1932, Hitler got 37% of the vote. He went to von Hindenburg and said, I refuse to support any government except the one that I'm in, that I lead. I want total power. Hindenburg said no, and instead you got the von Papen government, which was government by the threat of coup d'etat. It was a minority government. It was in the air. It has no majority in the parliament, but it's kept there because it's approved by President von Hindenburg. That's where we're headed for Italy. The so-called Präsidialregierung, that's what von Papen was under Hindenburg, a presidential government. In other words, the prime minister, the premier, the president of the Council of Ministers is going to be handpicked by Napolitano and imposed by Napolitano. And it's going to be interesting to see who that is, but it's going to be austerity. It's going to be the continuation of the Monti austerity plan. Remember, Grillo is now saying you don't need a government, that Italy can be like Belgium and have no government. The problem is if you have no government, you're leaving in place all of the Monti killer austerity measures, which are the real root of the crisis. And when the Grillinacci, the nasty little Grillini, the plague of locusts, because that's what they are, grasshoppers, crickets, locusts, that's a Grillo. They come in, they say, oh, let's have the abolition of the provinces, let's cut the number of members of parliament, let's cut their salaries, let's cut their perks, let's cut their expense accounts. It's all chicken feed. It amounts to absolutely nothing, all symbolic, nothing real, doesn't touch the banks, doesn't touch the European Central Bank, has no perspective of getting anywhere. Grillo is also reported to say the one government that he would support would be Napolitano. When Napolitano's term at the president of the Republic in the Quirinal Palace runs out, let him come down the Quirinal Hill and go to Palazzo Chigi and become the prime minister. And Grillo says he would support that. That would be an IMF technocratic regime with slightly different personalities. Grillo is now praising the Taoist Lao Tzu. Well, take a look at H.G. Creel, Chinese philosophy from Confucius to Mao Zedong, and the very interesting chapter there about Taoism on the surface is this irrationalism, vague and unfocused, but at the heart of it, it's the philosophy of the ruler on his throne. In other words, the nice outward trappings of Taoism, of mysticism and irrationalism, the core of it is authoritarianism and the iron fist and the sword. So this is where we have it, right? We're following these consultations are going on, right? The country is adrift. It's being downgraded. The spread is now at about 356 basis points, 3.56% more on the Italian bonds than the German bonds, and so forth. I would also point out the model of Grillo as the next generation, the new generation of the old color revolution. The old color revolution done by Otpor, very mechanistic, very much cookie cutter. You've always got the same stuff. A color, a slogan, a demagogue, a fake exit poll. These ingredients mechanistically applied. In the case of Grillo, it's got to be something that's more rooted in the country, more demagogic. Casaleggio, of course, plays a big role. We've got an interview this week with Enrico Sassoon talking about the report, the relation of Casaleggio and Grillo. Casaleggio, obviously a Freemason, showing Freemasonic Eye of Horus symbolism in his films. But in the other countries, let's take a look at the United States. Dr. Benjamin Carson, is he the new Grillo? Is he the new Grillo? He's a reactionary. He's a holy roller. But he's well known for saying things like, he doesn't want to cut the social safety net in the way that Ryan or Rand do. Carson says there should be no social safety net. The churches, he says, should provide the social safety net and not the government at all. Well, what about the atheists? What about the secular, the Muslims, the Jews, and all the others? What are they going to do in this, right? But he says, no, it's got to be the churches. This idea of somebody from outside politics, above politics, with sort of homespun, cracker barrel proverbs and stuff, that I think is something that you have to be on the lookout for. And again, I'm watching Dr. Benjamin Carson of Johns Hopkins Medical School as a possible candidate. He's obviously being groomed by Wall Street Journal, Hannity, and so forth as a possible new Grillo for the United States. Now, concerning the Italian polls, Berlusconi is up 2% in 1 week, 26.2%. Grillo is down 2%, 24.8%. Grillo he's gone from number 1 to number 2 to number 3 since the election. So good, he's declining. His authoritarian rage ball, hysterical fit in his blog, all of this is driving away support. Can't come quick enough. On the papacy, you can read the speech that won Bergoglio the papacy. It has been published in various forms, his notes for the speech, published by, I believe, the publication of the Cuban Catholic bishops. And he talks about the necessity of getting beyond the self-referential church. In other words, the Roman Catholic Church cannot contemplate itself, but it's got to have a role of charity and service as well as doctrine. This is now Il Papa Descamisado, the shirtless Pope, in the sense of the Perón populism in Argentina in the 40s and 50s. Los Descamisados. This is Il Papa Descamisado. So we'll be following that now during Holy Week. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is the final segment of our Good Friday broadcast. It's the 29th of March, and we are very honored and happy again to be joined by our friend Reverend Edward Pinkney of Benton Harbor, Michigan. And Reverend is going to tell us basically about two things. First of all, he's been doing some protest actions against these dictators that have now taken over Detroit, as well as Benton Harbor, Flint, Pontiac, Ecorse, and other cities. And then he's going to tell us about coming to the national capital area here, Washington, D.C., on April 3rd and 4th, which is now next week. So, Reverend, welcome.
Hey, man, Webster, it is a pleasure and an honor to be on your show, just to be able to talk about what happened yesterday and what we're going to do next week.
Please go ahead. Now, we understand you called me the other day. I put out a tweet saying Thursday morning at 7 a.m. out on the interstates, there would be some motorcades that would be going slow. So tell us.
Absolutely. We had 4 waves of 4 cars, and each car, each 4 layers was going to go 10 miles to slow down everything that was happening. Well, it was successful, but it wasn't as many cars as we would like. We plugged it up. And finally, here's the good news. They realized that it was a protest more than anything else, because the way we had it set up, we had everybody traveling 10 miles. At 10 miles, we wanted you to get off, because I didn't want anybody to get arrested. If anybody get arrested, it should be me. So this is what we did. We did. It was so successful that people have been calling all week. Well, they started last night calling, and they've been calling this morning, want to know when we're going to do the next one. But here's the catcher now. I was told that the sheriff's department would like to speak with me. So I said, well, they know where I live. If they want to talk to me, they can come to my home and speak with me in reference to this. I also knew that the big rally was next week, so I really didn't want them to get arrested, but they did a magnificent job. Anytime that you can get from 16 to 20 people with the possibility of getting arrested and still get out there and doing this, it was amazing. I tell you, I took my hat off to the group yesterday. I told them that I was so excited, just the idea that they were willing to do it. And unfortunately, for the only thing that we heard from was supposed to be the sheriff department, supposed to be they want to speak with me. So I'm ready to speak with them. Anytime they want to speak, anytime they want to talk, I'm available. And
let me ask you: is there any media coverage, any place people can read about this or hear about it?
It's supposed to be writing an article in the news in the community newspaper. We got an article of Benton Spirit or something like that. I did speak with them about it, and they're going to be running a story about it. So that's going to be pretty exciting for us. I was kind of excited, so I'm pretty sure they're going to write something about it. It didn't make the Herald Palladium, which I already knew that it probably wouldn't make their newspaper, because that's the corporate media. But it did. It's going to make they call it the Benton Spirit. You probably can go online, and I'll send you the link to it.
Please do. I'll put it out on Twitter, and people are going to be happy around the world to see people are fighting. That's what everybody's looking for. Find somewhere, someplace, somebody fighting. Now, Reverend, you said the big rally next week. What does that exactly refer to?
The big rally, we are going to be in Washington, D.C., right. April the 3rd. We're going to be at 1156 15th Street Northwest. That's the NAACP office there. And we're going to get there about 9 o'clock, and we're going to have a press conference at 10:30. Matter of fact, several media outlets have already called and confirmed that they want to have a personal interview with me during that week I'm there. They want me to come to the office, and they said they will be at the rally. So they want to talk. So this is the first time that, we ever had an opportunity where people was actually coming out and want to speak about the NAACP. Even though we had a good time in Los Angeles, the media was more or less not willing to really give us the props that we wanted. But also, on April the 4th, we're going to be at the headquarters of the NAACP, which is the 45th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. So we plan to be there, and also at 9 o'clock, and that address is 4805 Mount Hope Drive. We'll be there at 9 o'clock, and at 10:30 we will have our press conference. So we're looking at 4805 Mount Hope Drive, and that's in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay. So I'm more than happy to let people know, because it is crucial that people come out and see where we at and what we're doing.
We certainly have some good activists of the United Front Against Austerity, both in Washington and in Baltimore, who I think will be there. And I will certainly try to be there myself for that press conference.
That people actually come out and see exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it's important because we're there to let people know that we're no longer going to accept the NAACP being out of touch with our community and selling out to the corporations. We want them to, if they're going to fight for civil rights, we expect them to fight for civil rights. Right now, they no longer fight for civil rights, not in the black community. So I don't know where else you can fight for, but they don't. The NAACP, we're requesting that the Ben Jealous resign and the executive board and allow the members to elect the president and the executive board. So we're demanding that, and we expect them to have some kind of reply after this, because now we're on their turf. We're going to be in Baltimore and Washington, and that is something that they probably don't want to tolerate. Matter of fact, I received a call from someone from Washington who, I guess she called it a threat or something. I don't care what it was, but like I told her, I will be there, and I hope that you come out. And if you want to protest against us, I don't mind, but I will be there to protest against the NAACP.
Reverend, in the meantime now, do you have any news about this dictator running Detroit? Has he made any moves? Is there any new crimes on that front?
Well, the group that I was with, they was telling me this, that, once again, now you know that Kevin is, he has four liens against his home. And
4 liens?
4 liens against his home. And but here's the part that's even more important. He said that he didn't know that he had 4 liens against his home. Now, how are you going to straighten out Detroit if you walking around here with 4 liens against your home?
And what are those? Is that the IRS? Who's putting liens on his home?
Well, according to them, it's for tax purposes. It's a group. It was four different individuals had liens on his home, and what made it so amazing, the governor here, Snyder, knew about it. He knew about it because he said that he was going to make sure that Kevin take care of those liens on his home. But now you look. So that means that we are going to have to watch this guy. And this guy also said this. He said the residents in Benton are not in Detroit are not going to like him. Well, he already know that the residents in Detroit don't like him. So that was just a waste of words. His plan is that he said that one of the things that he's shooting for right now is the bridge and other things that he see that could be worked out to write off some of the debts that the Detroit has. I'm telling him that this doesn't even make sense. I said, what you're saying, it don't make sense. And the people in Detroit, funny to be, they said the state government owed them millions and millions and millions of dollars. And if the government paid them, they could pay their debts. So it's amazing when you think about it.
Let me just ask you, we got a couple of seconds left. You mean he wants to privatize the bridge from Detroit across to Windsor, Ontario?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And sell it off.
Right off the bat. The first thing he's going to do.
And that Snyder has been withholding payment of money that Lansing owes Detroit.
Detroit, millions of dollars.
All right, Reverend, thank you very much. It's great to have a fighter like you engaged on this. And we're going to see you here on April 3rd, 9 to 10:30 in the morning at the NAACP, 1156 15th Street Northwest, Washington, D.C., and then the next day in Baltimore. Congratulations on your fighting spirit.